Hey guys, tonight we journey into the fragrant world of ancient Egypt, where scents weren't just about smelling good, they were a vital part of everyday life, spirituality, and even the afterlife. Picture yourself strolling through the bustling markets of Thebes or stepping into a temple where the air is thick with the perfume of sacred oils and incense. The smell of myrrh, frankincense, and lotus petals might even remind you that, in ancient Egypt, your scent could literally define your place in the cosmos. You probably won't survive this, unless you've been schooled in the art of perfumery from 3,000 years ago. But don't worry, tonight, we're diving into all of this and more, and it'll be a sensational ride. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment with your location and what time it is where you are. I'd love to hear from you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the golden sands of the desert, your feet brushing over the dusty earth beneath the ancient Egyptian sun. You can feel the warmth of the land, but the air, it's different. The scent hits you first, rich, warm, almost intoxicating. You're surrounded by the soothing smells of crushed flowers, ancient resins, and oils that Egyptians knew would carry them from this world into the afterlife. Perfume wasn't just for luxury, it was interwoven into every corner of Egyptian life. In the ancient world, scent was more than a pleasant aroma. It was a statement. Perfume, oils, and incense were not only used to mask unpleasant odors but also as a bridge between humans and the divine. As you move through Egypt's temples, its markets, and even its homes, the air is rich with the scent of myrrh and frankincense, the precious oils used in religious rituals. These weren't your average beauty products, they were considered sacred substances, connecting those who wore them to the gods. It was a way of showing reverence and asserting your place in society. If you wore the right perfume, well, you might even get a divine favor or two. Historians still argue whether perfume making in Egypt was a purely Egyptian practice or if it had outside influences, but one thing's for sure, Egypt was the epicenter of perfume production in the ancient world. The ingredients they used weren't just aromatic, they were significant. Resins, flowers, and oils from far-off lands were imported for a single purpose, perfume. But what made Egyptian perfume so unique? The ingredients were anything but local. Yes, Egypt was blessed with the Nile, which provided fertile soil for countless flowers and herbs. But Egyptians looked far beyond their borders for exotic materials that would make their perfumes truly stand out. From the resinous myrrh that was harvested from trees in the Arabian Peninsula to the rich frankincense from the Horn of Africa, these ingredients were precious commodities, often traded along the famous incense routes. Perfume was a marker of social status, as we'll see. Those in the upper echelons of society could afford the rarest and most luxurious fragrances. Pharaohs, with their vast empires and wealth, certainly knew the power of scent, using it to create an aura of invincibility, mystery, and even divine connection. Imagine stepping into the palace of a pharaoh, the air thick with the heady aroma of perfumed oils. It wasn't just the smell, it was the experience. The scent elevated the atmosphere, giving those in the pharaoh's presence an almost otherworldly feeling. This fragrant power wasn't limited to royalty alone, though. Perfume played a role in the lives of ordinary Egyptians too. It wasn't just a luxury, it was practical. The Egyptians used perfumes for much more than smelling good. They believed that scent had the power to affect the soul, elevate consciousness, and even connect them to the gods. In fact, perfumes were often used in religious rituals to honor gods like Ra, Osiris, and Isis. The scent of burning frankincense, for example, was believed to carry prayers directly to the gods. Myrrh, similarly, was seen as a gift from the divine, and was used in both life and death ceremonies. Perfume wasn't just about rituals or social climbing, either. Egyptians were deeply concerned with personal hygiene and cleanliness, and perfumes were a vital part of this. The climate of Egypt was hot, and hygiene in the ancient world wasn't what we're used to today. People bathed regularly in the Nile, using oils and perfumes to keep their skin soft and fragrant in the heat. But even beyond this, perfumes were integral to beauty rituals. Women, in particular, used oils and scents to enhance their appearance, mixing fragrant oils with their makeup and skincare routines. Think of it as an ancient version of the luxurious spa treatments we indulge in today, minus the facials, but with the same level of sophistication. Perfumes, in Egypt, were also believed to have healing properties. Egyptians were pioneers in the world of medicine, and they understood the therapeutic benefits of scents. Lavender, for instance, was used to treat headaches, and myrrh was believed to have medicinal properties that could heal wounds. They weren't just crafting perfumes for pleasure, they were blending oils to heal the body, soothe the mind, and elevate the soul. As you stand here, amidst the scents of this ancient world, you begin to understand the true importance of perfume in Egyptian society. It wasn't just about luxury, it was about connection. A connection to the divine, to nature, to society, and even to the afterlife. Egyptians believed that their perfumes could bring them closer to their gods, and that the fragrances they wore could help them navigate life and death itself. It was, in essence, a spiritual practice that transcended mere vanity. Historians still argue whether perfume making in Egypt was a purely Egyptian practice or if it had outside influences, but the Egyptians undeniably mastered the art, influencing fragrance making throughout the ancient world. Their legacy, still felt today in the perfume industry, serves as a reminder that scents are more than just smells, they're experiences, markers of status, and powerful symbols of human connection. So, next time you catch a whiff of something nostalgic or soothing, remember, it could very well be an echo from the past, a lingering scent of an ancient civilization that believed scent wasn't just a luxury, it was a necessity, a way to connect to something far greater than themselves. Now that we've settled into the intoxicating world of Egyptian perfume, let's step into the realm of power, because when it comes to ancient Egypt, scent wasn't just a matter of preference, it was a statement of authority. Perfume was woven into the very fabric of Egypt's royal life, a symbol of wealth, divine favor, and above all, power. Imagine yourself standing before the great pharaoh, adorned in linen, gold, and the finest fragrances. You can almost smell the heady perfume that surrounded Egypt's leaders, enveloping them in a cloud of mystery and majesty. The pharaoh didn't just wear perfume to smell good, they wore it to make a statement about their rule, their connection to the divine, and their untouchable status. Let's start by looking at how perfumes were used by Egypt's most powerful people. The pharaohs, who were believed to be gods on earth, often wore the most expensive, exotic scents. These weren't just scents of luxury, they were tools of influence. The way the pharaohs smelled was just as important as their clothing or their royal insignia. The very scent that surrounded them was part of their divine aura. Frankincense, for example, wasn't just a pleasant aroma, it was thought to carry the prayers of the people straight to the gods. To be near the pharaoh, surrounded by the perfume of the divine, was to experience a form of holiness. It was a sensory reminder that they weren't just men, they were gods walking amongst mortals. Historians still argue whether the use of perfume by the pharaohs was merely a personal preference or if it was a carefully crafted political tool. Some believe that the Egyptians understood the power of scent so deeply that it was used strategically to reinforce the pharaoh's position as a divine ruler. In any case, it's clear that perfume played a crucial role in the construction of royal identity. The pharaohs used fragrance to make themselves more godlike, enhancing their personal brand. Every whiff of their perfume was a subtle reminder of their unique connection to the divine. But it wasn't just about wearing perfume, the pharaohs also had access to special, private perfume-making ceremonies. Only those in the highest ranks of Egyptian society, priests, royal courtiers, and top artisans, were involved in creating these sacred fragrances. These perfumes were often made from rare ingredients and sometimes had powerful symbolic meanings. Myrrh, for example, was believed to be the tears of the goddess Isis, a symbol of the divine grief and strength. When the pharaoh wore it, they weren't just wearing a fragrance, they were wearing the power of the gods. Perfume also played an essential role in the sacred rituals that upheld the pharaoh's divine rule. These rituals weren't just ceremonial, they were deeply spiritual, connecting the pharaoh with the gods and the cosmic order. One of the most notable examples was the use of incense during religious ceremonies. Frankincense, myrrh, and other resins were burned during rituals to create a sacred atmosphere, filling the temple with their divine scent. The very act of burning incense was believed to send prayers and offerings to the gods, and it was thought that the gods could smell the fragrant smoke and be pleased by it. For the pharaoh, the use of these perfumes in ritual wasn't just about pleasing the gods, it was about asserting their authority, reinforcing their divine mandate. As you think about this, it's clear that perfume in ancient Egypt was never just about a pleasant fragrance. It was deeply tied to the concept of kingship and divine right. The pharaohs were more than rulers, they were the living embodiment of the gods, and their scent served as a reminder of this cosmic truth. The very perfume that surrounded them was a tool in their divine arsenal, a way to enforce their authority and to mark their presence as something beyond human. But the use of perfume for power wasn't confined solely to the pharaohs. The Egyptian nobility also used scent as a marker of their high status. The wealthier you were, the rarer and more potent your perfume. Aristocrats and priests had access to the finest oils and resins, and they wore perfumes not only for personal enjoyment but to display their social status. These perfumes were symbols of wealth and influence, often made from exotic and expensive ingredients that were traded from far-off lands. Imagine the richness of a perfume made from the resin of a tree that only grew in the distant lands of the Arabian Peninsula, or the sweet fragrance of a flower that could only be found in the far reaches of Nubia. These perfumes were not just for smelling good, they were status symbols, part of the ritual of showing who was in power and who had access to the most coveted materials. Historians still debate whether the nobility wore perfumes purely for social reasons or if there were deeper, spiritual meanings tied to these fragrances. While it's clear that perfumes were a way of flaunting wealth, there's also evidence that they were used in religious practices. For example, priests of the temples often used perfumes as part of their daily rituals to honor the gods. These were not just ordinary fragrances, they were considered sacred, charged with the power to ward off evil, attract divine favor, and purify the soul. Perfumes were even believed to play a role in the physical world. Some people believed that scents could heal the body, protect against disease, or even influence the weather. For example, it was thought that myrrh could cure ailments like coughs and wounds, while frankincense could purify the air and create a calming atmosphere. The Egyptian elite used perfume not only to enhance their personal hygiene and appearance but also to maintain their health and spiritual well-being. The power of scent wasn't just in its fragrance, it was in its ability to protect, heal, and elevate the spirit. The political and spiritual power of perfume in ancient Egypt is undeniable. It wasn't just about luxury or indulgence, it was a fundamental tool in shaping the lives of the pharaohs and their nobility. The scent they wore wasn't just about fragrance, it was about power. Power to rule, power to connect with the divine, and power to maintain their place in the world. As you stand in the midst of this world, surrounded by the divine scents of Egypt, you begin to understand just how much perfume mattered. It wasn't just an accessory, it was a symbol, a tool, and an essential part of the divine mandate of the pharaohs. Now, let's move from the realm of power to the divine, where scent truly held a sacred place. In ancient Egypt, perfumes weren't just for the living, they were also integral to the spiritual life and the rituals that connected humans to their gods. The use of fragrances was so deeply embedded in religious practices that perfume became a direct link to the divine. It's almost as if the very air you breathe in Egypt was infused with offerings to gods like Ra, Isis, and Osiris. Imagine walking into a temple where the heavy fragrance of myrrh and frankincense fills the air, mingling with the sound of priests chanting and the flickering of torchlight. This isn't just perfume, it's a way to communicate with the gods. Historians still debate the exact role of scent in Egyptian religious life. Was it just a ceremonial luxury, or did the fragrances carry a deeper, more profound significance? Some scholars believe that incense and perfumes were not just used to please the gods, they were thought to carry the essence of human offerings, prayers, and sacrifices up to the heavens. The rich, sacred smoke of burning incense was thought to rise and mingle with the divine, acting as a messenger between the human world and the gods. Imagine the scene during a religious ceremony. The high priest steps forward, holding a bowl of burning frankincense. The temple is filled with the thick, smoky scent that seems to reach up to the heavens themselves. The gods, it was believed, could smell this fragrance and would respond to the offerings. The divine connection wasn't just made through words or actions, it was made through scent. Fragrance, in this context, was an offering that carried human desires and prayers to the gods. It was a way for the people to send their messages into the spiritual realm, hoping that the gods would receive them and bless their lives in return. The use of incense and perfume in these rituals was so significant that it wasn't just reserved for special ceremonies. Daily life in ancient Egypt was infused with the divine presence of scent. In the temples, incense was burned regularly to honor the gods and maintain a constant connection with the divine. Priests would use perfumes and oils to cleanse the temple, anoint idols, and create an atmosphere of divine purity. These weren't just ordinary fragrances, they were thought to have divine properties, capable of purifying both the space and the soul. As you wander through these temples, you begin to realize that the scent of myrrh and frankincense was more than just a pleasant smell, it was a divine tool. These fragrances were considered to have spiritual power. Myrrh, for example, wasn't just used for its fragrance, it was believed to have protective qualities. It was often used in rituals to ward off evil spirits and protect the sacred spaces of Egypt. Frankincense, similarly, was believed to purify the air and create a calming, sacred atmosphere. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians saw scent as a form of magic or a pure offering. Some suggest that they viewed these fragrances as tools to manipulate the spiritual world, while others believe that they were simply seen as offerings of reverence and devotion. Either way, the connection between scent and the divine in ancient Egypt was undeniable. Perfumes weren't just for luxury, they were part of the rituals that ensured the gods were pleased and that the cosmic order remained intact. But the role of scent in religious practice didn't stop at the temples. Perfumes were also used in funerary rituals, which were just as, if not more, important than the offerings to the gods. The Egyptians believed that scent had the power to guide the soul to the afterlife. In fact, many of the perfumes used in funerary rituals were designed specifically to aid the soul in its journey through the underworld. The dead, like the living, needed scent to be connected to the divine. Perfume was used to anoint the bodies of the deceased, to make them smell pleasant and ready for the journey into the afterlife. The fragrances used during mummification were not just for aesthetic reasons, they were essential for the soul's survival. As you watch the mummification process unfold, the rich smell of resin, oils, and incense fills the room, a sensory marker that signals the transition from the physical world to the divine one. One of the most important perfumes in the afterlife rituals was a blend of myrrh and frankincense. These resins were not just valuable for their scents, they were thought to have the power to protect the dead from the dangers they might face on their journey through the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that the dead would encounter various trials in the underworld, and perfume was used to protect them from these dangers. The sacred aroma of myrrh and frankincense was believed to shield the soul, keeping it safe as it traveled through the underworld and into the afterlife. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians believed that perfumes could actually influence the fate of the soul or whether they were simply symbolic offerings. Either way, the belief in the power of scent to affect the soul's journey is evident in the use of perfumes in funerary rituals. The dead, like the living, needed to be connected to the divine through fragrance, and perfumes played a key role in this connection. Perfume also had a place in the spiritual lives of the living, not just the dead. During religious ceremonies, individuals would often apply perfumes or oils to themselves as part of the ritual. This wasn't just about enhancing their personal scent, it was about creating a spiritual connection to the gods. The use of these sacred fragrances during religious observances allowed the individual to become part of the divine world, enveloped in the same fragrances that filled the temples and the heavens. As you reflect on the use of perfumes in these sacred rituals, you begin to understand the depth of their significance. They weren't just about beauty or hygiene, they were a way for the living and the dead to stay connected to the divine. The scents of myrrh, frankincense, and other sacred oils served as a bridge between the human world and the divine, a way for Egyptians to communicate with their gods, protect their souls, and ensure their place in the afterlife. So, as you inhale the rich, heady fragrance of myrrh and frankincense in this ancient temple, you realize that you are surrounded by something much more powerful than just scent. You're surrounded by a world that believes that fragrance has the power to shape life, death, and everything in between. And in this world, perfume is much more than luxury, it's a divine necessity. As we continue to explore the spiritual and practical applications of perfumes in ancient Egypt, we find ourselves drawn to the very essence of the materials used. What were these ingredients that not only gave off intoxicating fragrances but also held powerful meanings and medicinal properties? The ancient Egyptians were experts in utilizing the flora and fauna of their land and beyond, crafting perfumes that were as rich in symbolism as they were in scent. But these were not just pleasant fragrances, they were key to the very structure of Egyptian life, from religious ceremonies to personal well-being. Let's start with the plants and flowers that grew along the banks of the Nile. The Egyptians were keenly aware of the power of nature and used local resources to create some of the earliest perfumes in history. Perhaps the most famous of these was the lotus flower. This delicate bloom, with its sweet, intoxicating scent, became a symbol of rebirth and the sun god Ra. As the lotus emerged from the mud each day, it represented life's constant renewal, an idea that was central to Egyptian spirituality. The flower was often used in perfumes, but it also held great significance in religious rituals. The lotus perfume, with its rich, floral aroma, was believed to connect the worshippers to the divine and to the eternal cycle of life and death. The fragrance of the lotus was the scent of the gods, a divine essence that offered both comfort and transcendence. Historians still debate whether the lotus flower was actually used in its natural form to make perfume, or if the lotus scent came from other flowers with similar characteristics. Nonetheless, the symbolic weight of the lotus in Egyptian culture cannot be overstated. Its fragrance represented purity, enlightenment, and the unbreakable link between life and the afterlife. For the Egyptians, wearing the scent of the lotus was more than just wearing perfume, it was a declaration of spiritual harmony with the universe. Then there's the iconic frankincense and myrrh, resins harvested from trees in faraway lands, including Arabia and Somalia. These substances were integral to Egyptian perfumery, both for their rich, warm aromas and their sacred significance. Frankincense, with its sharp, woody fragrance, was burned as incense in temples to honor the gods. It was believed that the scent of burning frankincense carried prayers straight to the heavens. The resins were also used in oils, perfumes, and even in mummification. Myrrh, with its sweeter, almost medicinal scent, was used not just in religious offerings, but also for its healing properties. It was a prized ingredient in both perfumes and medicinal salves, used for everything from treating wounds to soothing sore throats. The Egyptians knew that the best perfumes weren't just about pleasing the senses, they were about preserving health, wellness, and spiritual balance. Historians still argue over the exact origins of frankincense and myrrh in Egypt. Some believe that these resins were brought to Egypt by traders, while others think that the Egyptians may have cultivated the plants themselves. Regardless of their origins, it's clear that these resins became an essential part of Egyptian culture. They were used in everything from daily religious rituals to personal beauty routines, and their rich, earthy scent was synonymous with sacred rituals. But the Egyptians didn't stop there, they expanded their perfume repertoire by incorporating rare and exotic ingredients into their creations. Spices, flowers, and oils from distant lands were imported along trade routes, allowing the perfume artisans of Egypt to create complex blends that were unlike anything seen before. One such exotic ingredient was cinnamon, which was prized for its sweet and spicy fragrance. It was used in perfumes, but also in food and drink, making it an all-around luxury item for the elite of Egyptian society. Cinnamon was believed to have both purifying and invigorating properties, making it a popular choice for those seeking to enhance both their physical and spiritual well-being. Another beloved ingredient was the resin from the benzoin tree. This sweet, vanilla-like fragrance was used in perfumes and incense, but it was also valued for its medicinal uses. The Egyptians used benzoin to treat coughs, wounds, and even as an antiseptic. In a society where health and wellness were deeply intertwined with spiritual purity, this resin was more than just a fragrance, it was a symbol of divine protection and healing. Egyptian perfumers were not just creating scents, they were creating experiences. Each fragrance was carefully crafted with specific intentions in mind, whether to honor the gods, protect the body, or heal the soul. The Egyptians understood that scents were not just ephemeral, they were transformative. A single whiff of frankincense or myrrh could change the atmosphere of a room, elevate a religious ceremony, or purify a person's spirit. Perfumes were both a form of personal expression and a spiritual tool, capable of transcending the physical world and connecting the wearer to the divine. As you think about the power of these ingredients, it becomes clear that the ancient Egyptians had a deep understanding of the natural world and its ability to shape both the body and the spirit. The plants, resins, and oils they used in their perfumes weren't just chosen for their fragrances, they were selected for their symbolic meanings and their ability to affect the soul. Scents weren't just superficial, they were part of a larger cosmic system, a way to connect the physical and spiritual realms. This knowledge of plants and perfumes wasn't confined to the priests and the royal elite. The art of perfume making was highly developed in Egypt, and skilled perfumers were highly valued members of society. These artisans had access to the finest materials and the most sophisticated techniques for blending oils, resins, and flowers into the perfect fragrance. While perfume making was an art, it was also a science, with complex formulas and methods that were passed down through generations. Historians still debate how the Egyptians learned the art of perfume making. Some believe it was an indigenous practice that evolved over time, while others think the Egyptians learned from other ancient civilizations, such as the Sumerians or the Mesopotamians. However they learned it, the Egyptians mastered the craft and set the standard for perfume making that would influence the rest of the ancient world and beyond. As you reflect on the complexity of Egyptian perfumes, it's clear that their perfumes were not just about beauty, they were about balance. Balance between the physical and spiritual, the earthly and the divine. The fragrances created in Egypt were not just to enhance beauty or pleasure, they were to enhance life itself. And perhaps, in their own way, the Egyptians understood what we only now are beginning to realize, that scent can elevate the soul, soothe the mind, and connect us to something greater than ourselves.
As we continue our exploration of the fragrances that defined ancient Egypt, let's focus on two resins that were so important they almost seem like gifts from the gods themselves, myrrh and frankincense. These two powerful ingredients were not just luxury items for the elite but sacred offerings, carefully chosen and revered for their spiritual significance. Imagine stepping into an Egyptian temple, the air thick with the smoke of burning incense. You can almost see the priests, draped in linen, their hands raised toward the heavens as the aromatic wafts of myrrh and frankincense climbed to the sky, carrying prayers to the gods. These scents weren't just pleasing to the senses, they were believed to carry with them divine power, acting as a channel for communication between humans and the gods. Historians still debate the exact origins of myrrh and frankincense in Egypt. Some suggest that these resins were traded from distant lands like the Arabian Peninsula and the Horn of Africa, while others think the Egyptians themselves may have cultivated the trees. Regardless of their origins, it's clear that these resins became essential to Egyptian life and religious practice. Myrrh, in particular, was so valued that it was referred to as the gift of the gods. It was harvested from trees that grew in the arid regions of Africa and Arabia, where the sap was collected, dried, and transformed into fragrant resin. The Egyptians believed myrrh was sacred, not just because of its fragrance but because of its powerful medicinal properties. It was used in many aspects of Egyptian life, from perfumes and incense to healing salves and embalming fluids. The scent of myrrh was associated with the goddess Isis, who was thought to have been the creator of perfume. For the Egyptians, to wear myrrh was to be in the presence of the divine, to be enveloped in the power of a goddess. The aroma of myrrh was considered protective and purifying, driving away evil spirits and guarding both body and soul. Frankincense, on the other hand, was just as revered but served slightly different purposes. This resin, derived from the boswellia tree found in parts of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, was burned as incense in Egyptian temples and royal ceremonies. Its fragrance was sharp, woody, and slightly citrusy, with a subtle sweetness that made it both grounding and uplifting. Frankincense, like myrrh, was believed to be a gift from the gods. It was used extensively in religious rituals, where its smoke would rise in offering to the gods. The Egyptians believed that the gods could smell the incense and be pleased by it, their divine presence drawn closer with each puff of fragrant smoke. For the pharaohs and priests, frankincense was more than a pleasant aroma, it was a sacred act of devotion, an integral part of the divine exchange between humans and the gods. But frankincense wasn't just used in temples. It was also a key component in perfumes. The resin's ability to hold and enhance other fragrances made it an essential ingredient in many of Egypt's most prized perfumes. The rich, sacred scent of frankincense was mixed with other oils, herbs, and flowers to create blends that would be used by the royal court, the nobility, and even the general populace. These perfumes weren't just about luxury, they were tools for spiritual alignment. The fragrance of frankincense, worn by those who could afford it, was a way to keep the divine close, a reminder that the gods were always watching, always listening, always near. The use of frankincense and myrrh in Egyptian life was so pervasive that it became almost synonymous with Egyptian culture itself. Historians still debate whether the use of these resins in Egypt was influenced by trade or developed organically within Egyptian society. However, it's clear that they played a key role in religious, medicinal, and cultural life. They were used to honor the gods, protect the living, and ensure the safe passage of the dead. In fact, frankincense and myrrh were so essential to Egyptian funerary practices that they were often included in tombs and burial rituals, meant to accompany the deceased on their journey to the afterlife. As we move deeper into the spiritual and symbolic uses of myrrh and frankincense, we find that these resins weren't just used in religious ceremonies, they were also integral to the process of mummification. When a body was prepared for burial, the skin was often anointed with oils infused with frankincense and myrrh. These resins had powerful preservative qualities, believed to not only protect the body from decay but also to prepare the soul for its journey to the afterlife. The embalming process itself was an intricate blend of religious rituals and scientific knowledge, with perfumed oils playing a central role. The scent of myrrh and frankincense was thought to help the soul transition from the physical world to the spiritual one, guiding it safely through the underworld and ensuring it was received favorably by the gods. Perfumes made with myrrh and frankincense also played a role in the daily life of the living, especially for the elite. Pharaohs, queens, and nobles wore perfumes made with these resins, not only for their divine associations but also for their powerful protective properties. To wear such perfumes was to ensure that you were under the protection of the gods, enveloped in a divine aura that signaled your high status. The perfumes were more than just cosmetic, they were divine armor, a constant reminder of the wearer's elevated position in the world. As you stand here, surrounded by the scents of myrrh and frankincense, you realize that these perfumes were more than just luxuries, they were spiritual tools. They were used to connect with the divine, to protect the body and soul, and to ensure that the afterlife would be as fragrant and safe as life itself. They were part of the intricate dance between the living and the divine, a reminder that in Egypt, even the scent of the air was sacred. And as the smoke of frankincense rises, you can't help but be struck by the power of these fragrances. They are more than just smells, they are part of a world where scent is a bridge between life and death, the physical and the divine. In the ancient world, to breathe in the aroma of myrrh and frankincense was to breathe in the very essence of Egypt's spiritual and cultural identity. These resins weren't just the stuff of perfume, they were the stuff of eternity. Now that we've explored the fragrances that defined both the divine and royal worlds of Egypt, let's turn our focus to a truly fascinating concept, the use of perfumes in the afterlife. The Egyptians didn't just consider perfume an earthly luxury or a divine offering, they believed scent was an essential element of the soul's journey after death. For the Egyptians, the afterlife was an intricate, multi-stage process, and they believed that the right scents could guide and protect the deceased as they made their way through the underworld. Picture this, you're standing in a tomb, surrounded by the rich, soothing aromas of myrrh and frankincense, prepared to guide the soul of the departed through the trials of the underworld. Historians still argue whether perfume in the afterlife was a literal part of the burial process or a symbolic gesture to ensure that the deceased would reach the gods. Regardless of the exact interpretation, it's clear that perfume played a vital role in Egyptian funerary practices. The most significant of these practices was the use of resins like myrrh, frankincense, and other aromatic oils in the mummification process. These were not just for preserving the body, they were intended to guide the soul safely to the afterlife. Let's break it down. When a body was mummified, the Egyptians used oils and resins to preserve the physical form for the journey into the next world. Frankincense and myrrh were commonly used in this process, not just because of their preservative qualities, but because they were believed to have spiritual properties. Myrrh, in particular, was used to protect the body from decay, a vital part of ensuring that the soul could return to the body after the journey through the underworld. Frankincense, on the other hand, was believed to purify the soul and provide divine protection during the perilous trip through the afterlife. But the significance of scent didn't stop at the embalming process. Perfumes and oils were placed in tombs alongside the deceased, ensuring that they had access to these scents in the afterlife. These tombs were not just burial sites, they were sanctuaries meant to prepare the deceased for their eternal journey. The perfumes placed in these tombs weren't just luxury items, they were spiritual tools. The sweet, divine scents of frankincense and myrrh were meant to accompany the soul through the afterlife, warding off evil spirits and ensuring that the soul was protected as it traveled through the various stages of the underworld. The importance of these fragrances in the afterlife was so great that some tombs contained entire sets of perfume jars, crafted with the utmost care to ensure that the deceased would be prepared for their eternal existence. These perfumes were often made with a mix of precious resins, oils, and herbs, each ingredient carefully chosen for its spiritual properties. The scent of these perfumes would have been a constant reminder of the divine, a way for the soul to remain connected to the gods even in the afterlife. Historians still debate how the Egyptians thought perfumes affected the soul after death. Some scholars believe that the fragrances had the power to cleanse the soul, making it pure and ready to enter the realm of the gods. Others suggest that the perfumes were simply used to make the tomb more pleasant, offering a comforting, divine fragrance that would soothe the deceased during their journey. Whatever the exact belief, the role of perfume in the afterlife was undeniable. It was an essential part of the journey from life to death and into eternity. As you stand in front of one of these tombs, you can almost feel the connection between the living and the divine. The rich, sacred aromas of frankincense and myrrh fill the air, offering a sense of peace and protection. These scents weren't just pleasant, they were a way for the Egyptians to ensure that the dead remained connected to the divine, ensuring that their souls would be able to pass through the underworld and into the presence of the gods. It wasn't just the pharaohs or the nobility who were afforded these scents in the afterlife. Perfume was an important part of the funerary practices of ordinary Egyptians, too. While the wealthier classes had access to the finest, most exotic fragrances, even those of lower status could receive perfumes in their tombs, ensuring that they too had the spiritual protection needed for their journey. This was an important part of Egyptian society, where death and the afterlife were not seen as a final ending but as a continuation of the journey. Everyone, regardless of social status, deserved to make this transition with the best tools available, and perfume was one of the most important. The connection between scent and the afterlife also extended to the physical protection of the deceased. The Egyptians believed that the soul of the deceased needed to be protected from malevolent forces during its journey through the underworld. Perfume, with its divine properties, was seen as a powerful force against evil spirits. Myrrh, in particular, was believed to be a protective substance, warding off harmful influences and ensuring that the soul remained pure and safe. The fragrances were not just used for embalming, they were used to guard the soul during the trials of the afterlife, offering protection and guidance as the soul faced the judgment of Osiris and the other gods of the underworld. As you reflect on the role of perfume in the afterlife, you begin to realize that the Egyptians didn't just see perfume as a luxury or a tool for enhancing beauty, they saw it as a crucial part of the journey through death. The fragrances of frankincense, myrrh, and other sacred oils weren't just for the living, they were essential to the dead. They were a way of maintaining a divine connection, ensuring that the soul remained protected and pure throughout the trials of the underworld, and ultimately reaching the gods. Now, imagine walking through the tombs of the pharaohs, the air heavy with the scents of sacred resins. You can almost hear the whispers of the past, the echo of ancient prayers carried on the fragrant air. In the world of ancient Egypt, scent wasn't just about luxury, it was a vital part of the spiritual journey, guiding the soul from this life to the next, and ensuring that even in death, the divine remained ever present. We've explored the divine significance of perfumes in ancient Egypt, but let's now dive into how perfumes were used for personal care and beauty. While fragrance in Egypt certainly had a spiritual and symbolic importance, it also played a key role in the daily lives of Egyptians. The use of perfumes wasn't just reserved for the gods or the afterlife, it was a part of personal hygiene, self-care, and beauty rituals. Imagine stepping into the bustling streets of an ancient Egyptian marketplace, surrounded by the sweet, spicy aromas of exotic oils and perfumes, each one promising to enhance your beauty and well-being. The Egyptians were pioneers in personal grooming, and their use of perfumes went beyond just applying a nice scent. They understood the importance of keeping the body in harmony with the mind and soul. Bathing was a regular practice, especially among the wealthier classes, and perfumes were often used as part of the cleansing process. The rich used perfumed oils to massage their skin, making it soft and fragrant, but the use of scent also had a more profound purpose. These oils weren't just for cosmetic purposes, they were meant to enhance the spiritual and physical well-being of the person. Historians still debate the extent to which the use of perfume was purely a beauty practice or if it also served as a form of protection. Some suggest that the Egyptians used perfumes not only to smell pleasant but also to ward off the harsh desert climate and its effects on the skin. The hot Egyptian sun, combined with the dust and dryness of the environment, could be harsh on the skin. So, scented oils were applied not just to make the skin softer but also to protect it from the elements. The rich variety of oils and perfumes that were used by the elite speaks to how deeply embedded fragrance was in Egyptian culture. One of the most popular oils used in beauty rituals was olive oil. Mixed with fragrant flowers, herbs, and spices, this oil was used as a base for many perfumes. The Egyptians also used sesame oil, which was believed to be both soothing and moisturizing, to create fragrant body lotions. But it wasn't just about oils. Perfumed powders, perfumes, and incense were also part of daily life, especially among the upper class. These products were often made from flowers like lotus and jasmine, creating fragrances that were not only pleasing but also believed to have soothing or invigorating effects on the body and mind. Historians still argue whether perfumes were more about beauty or about spiritual protection, but there's no doubt that the Egyptians blended both in their daily rituals. The perfumes they used were believed to have an energizing or calming effect, and they were an integral part of their grooming routines. For example, the scent of lavender was often used to calm the mind, while the invigorating smell of mint and rosemary helped energize the body. These scents were not just about looking good, they were about feeling good too. Perfume was not limited to the elite, even the middle classes used oils and scents to care for their bodies. While the wealthier Egyptians had access to exotic and expensive fragrances, there are indications that those of lesser means still had their own perfumed oils, often made from local plants and herbs. It's likely that the average Egyptian applied simpler perfumes, like those made from frankincense, myrrh, or local flowers, but the underlying belief in the power of scent to heal and protect remained the same. Women, in particular, were highly involved in the art of scenting their bodies, and the use of perfume was often tied to beauty and allure. Egyptian women were known for their intricate hairstyles, cosmetics, and elaborate jewelry, and scent was the finishing touch that completed their beauty regimen. They wore perfume not just for hygiene, but to enhance their attractiveness, making scent an important part of seduction and personal allure. The perfumes they used were often light, floral, and delicate, designed to make them smell fresh and appealing. But the power of scent went beyond attraction. Perfumes were also used to project status and wealth. The more rare and exotic the ingredients, the more impressive the fragrance. And the wealthier a woman was, the more likely she was to wear perfumes made from ingredients that were both rare and expensive, like lotus and cinnamon. Perfume was also used for spiritual and psychological well-being. In a society where mental health was not yet fully understood, fragrance was seen as a way to balance the mind and body. The Egyptians believed that scent had the power to influence mood, and the right fragrance could help you feel at ease or improve your focus. Aromatherapy, in a way, was already practiced in ancient Egypt, with people using fragrant oils and incense not just to beautify but to create harmony within themselves. These spiritual and psychological benefits weren't just reserved for the elite. Even common Egyptians believed in the power of perfume to heal and protect, with many using oils to soothe stress and promote relaxation. As you immerse yourself in this ancient world, you realize that perfume in Egypt was not just an accessory or luxury, it was a multifaceted tool. It was used to beautify, to protect, to heal, and to connect with the divine. The Egyptians understood the deep power of scent, and they used it in every facet of their lives, from personal care to social status to spiritual health. Scent wasn't just a fleeting pleasure, it was a lifelong practice that affected both the body and soul. In the royal courts, perfume was a symbol of wealth and power. The higher your social status, the more exotic and rare your perfume. Imagine the perfumes of Cleopatra, who was said to have had an exquisite collection of oils and perfumes at her disposal. Cleopatra, with her sharp political mind and allure, knew how to use fragrance to her advantage, projecting an image of divine beauty and power. Her perfumes, made from the finest ingredients available, were just as much a part of her image as her stunning wardrobe and intellect. For the common Egyptians, perfume might not have been a statement of power, but it was still an essential part of daily life. The scents they used may have been simpler, but they were no less meaningful. Just as the elite used perfume to project power, the common people used it to maintain their health, beauty, and spiritual balance. Everyone, regardless of social status, could use fragrance to elevate their existence, making perfume not just a luxury, but a necessity in the ancient world. Now that we've examined the personal and spiritual roles of perfume, let's delve into the fascinating world of perfume making itself in ancient Egypt. As we walk through the bustling streets of ancient Egyptian cities like Thebes or Memphis, we're surrounded by the heady aromas of flowers, resins, and spices that have been carefully crafted into luxurious oils and perfumes. Behind these intoxicating scents lies the intricate and skilled art of perfume making, which was a highly specialized profession in ancient Egypt. Imagine entering the perfume workshops of the time, where artisans carefully mixed, blended, and prepared perfumes fit for pharaohs and nobility. This wasn't just a craft, it was an art form, a practice passed down through generations, and an essential part of the Egyptian economy and culture. Historians still debate the specific methods and techniques used by Egyptian perfumers, but there's no question that they were ahead of their time. The art of perfume making in Egypt was highly refined, and it involved a complex understanding of not just the materials being used but also their symbolic, spiritual, and therapeutic properties. Perfume makers were respected and highly skilled artisans, often working in royal workshops or temples, creating fragrances for the pharaohs, priests, and wealthy aristocrats. The first step in perfume making was, of course, the selection of ingredients. The Egyptians had access to a wide variety of local flowers, resins, oils, and spices that they used to create their perfumes. Myrrh and frankincense, as we've already seen, were among the most prized ingredients, but the Egyptians also used other materials such as cinnamon, lotus, and jasmine. They would extract the aromatic oils from these plants through various methods, the most common being pressing or soaking the plant material in oil or water to extract its fragrance. The process wasn't quick, it required patience and precision, and the quality of the perfume depended largely on the quality of the ingredients and the technique of the perfumer. Once the oils were extracted, the real artistry began. Skilled perfumers would blend different oils and resins together to create a balanced fragrance. They understood the importance of layering scents, mixing lighter, floral fragrances with heavier, woodier ones to create a rich, complex aroma. Some perfumes were designed to be light and refreshing, perfect for daily wear, while others were more intense, reserved for religious ceremonies or special occasions. The perfume-making process was highly meticulous, as the balance of ingredients had to be just right to ensure that the fragrance was pleasing and effective. It was as much about science as it was about art. Each fragrance had to serve a specific purpose, whether it was to purify, protect, or delight. Historians still wonder about the exact methods used by ancient Egyptian perfumers to refine these oils. While we know that the Egyptians used simple tools like presses and grinding stones, some believe they might have also employed more complex techniques, such as distillation, which wasn't widely practiced in other ancient civilizations. Though there's no definitive proof that distillation was used in ancient Egypt, some scholars believe it may have been possible, given the advanced understanding of chemistry and medicine in the society. Regardless of the methods, the skill involved in creating perfumes was immense, and Egyptian perfume makers were undoubtedly at the forefront of the ancient world's fragrance industry. The finished perfumes were then stored in beautifully crafted containers, often made of glass or pottery, and sometimes even precious metals like gold or silver. These vessels were designed not just for functionality but for beauty as well, reflecting the importance of fragrance in Egyptian society. The containers were often ornate, decorated with intricate designs or hieroglyphs that indicated the perfume's purpose or the god associated with it. Some of these perfume containers have been found in tombs and archaeological sites, revealing the exquisite craftsmanship of the time and the importance of perfumes as valuable, sacred items. Perfume makers often worked closely with priests in the temples, as perfumes were a key part of religious rituals. In the temples of Egypt, incense and perfumes were burned regularly to honor the gods, and skilled perfumers were called upon to create the perfect fragrances for these sacred offerings. Perfume making was, therefore, not only a commercial enterprise but also a spiritual practice, as the fragrances created by the artisans were considered offerings to the gods themselves. The connection between perfume and the divine was evident in the way these scents were used to purify, protect, and invoke the presence of the gods during religious ceremonies. But while perfume making in Egypt was clearly a highly regarded profession, it wasn't reserved only for the elite. Perfume making was an important part of the Egyptian economy, and the trade of perfumes and fragrant oils played a significant role in commerce. Perfumed oils and resins were traded along the famous incense routes, with Egypt exporting its luxurious perfumes to neighboring civilizations like Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome. These fragrances were highly sought after, as they were considered not only beautiful but also spiritually potent. To wear Egyptian perfume was to be connected to the divine, and it was a mark of wealth, status, and refinement. The skill of the perfumer was passed down through generations, with apprentices learning the craft from their elders. This practice was not just an occupation, it was a respected and sacred role in Egyptian society, ensuring that perfume making remained an essential and respected art for centuries. The connection between the perfume maker and the divine was deeply ingrained in Egyptian culture, making perfume not just a commodity, but a spiritual offering. As you think about the craft of Egyptian perfume making, you realize that it was more than just a means of producing fragrance, it was an intricate, sacred process that blended art, science, and spirituality. Perfume wasn't just about luxury, it was about creating an experience, a journey that connected the wearer to the gods, to the soul, and to the very essence of Egypt itself. The scents created by these skilled artisans were part of a larger system of belief, reflecting the Egyptians' deep understanding of how scent could influence both the physical and spiritual world. So, as you imagine the perfume workshops of ancient Egypt, you realize just how advanced and sacred this practice was. The fragrances that filled the air weren't just there to please the nose, they were there to heal, to protect, to connect with the divine, and to ensure that the soul would continue its journey, whether in life or death. Now that we've explored the art of perfume making and the craftsmanship behind Egypt's divine scents, let's turn our attention to the people behind the creations, the royal perfumers and their invaluable role in Egyptian society. These artisans weren't just skilled professionals, they were revered individuals, often working closely with pharaohs, queens, and priests to create the perfumes and oils that would be used in royal ceremonies, daily life, and religious rituals. Imagine stepping into the grand palace of a pharaoh, where skilled perfumers, with delicate hands and an in-depth understanding of fragrance, prepare sacred oils for both personal use and divine offerings. These craftsmen weren't just mixing oils and resins, they were weaving together the divine with the earthly, creating fragrances that would help connect Egypt's most powerful figures to the gods themselves. Perfume making in ancient Egypt was so revered that the role of royal perfumer was often passed down from one generation to the next. These artisans were held in high esteem, trusted not only with creating luxurious fragrances but also with preserving the spiritual purity of the pharaoh's court. Imagine the pressure they must have faced, crafting the very fragrances that would be worn by the ruler of the land, the divine representative on earth, and preparing the offerings that would be presented to the gods. Perfume was not merely about luxury, it was a vital part of Egypt's spiritual and political infrastructure. Historians still debate the exact structure of the perfume-making profession in Egypt, but it's clear that the craft was highly organized and specialized. In the royal court, perfumers were part of an elaborate hierarchy, with a chief perfumer overseeing a team of skilled artisans who would work under their guidance. These royal workshops, sometimes located near temples or the pharaoh's palace, were specialized spaces where perfume-making was treated with the utmost care and reverence. The chief perfumer would be in charge of sourcing the finest ingredients, from rare resins and oils to exotic flowers, and ensuring that the finished product met the highest standards. In addition to crafting fragrances for royal use, these perfumers were often called upon to create perfumes for important religious ceremonies. Temples in Egypt were dedicated to gods like Ra, Osiris, and Isis, and the priests in these temples performed rituals that required sacred offerings. Perfume played an integral role in these rituals, as it was used to purify spaces, anoint idols, and please the gods with its divine scent. The perfumers who worked closely with the priests were not only skilled in their craft, they were spiritually connected, often seen as intermediaries between the gods and the pharaoh's court. Their work was not just about scent, it was about ensuring that the offerings were perfect, ensuring that the divine presence would be felt and revered. Perfume making in Egypt was far more than an art, it was also a science, and the royal perfumers were highly educated in both. They understood the properties of various resins, oils, and flowers and knew exactly how to combine them to create fragrances with specific purposes. Whether the goal was to create a calming fragrance for a queen, a protective perfume for the pharaoh, or a purifying incense for a temple, the perfumers had to master the complex alchemy of scents. This was no simple task, it required years of training and a deep understanding of both the spiritual significance of the ingredients and their physical effects on the body. The role of royal perfumer wasn't only prestigious, it was also highly lucrative. The pharaoh's court had ample resources to fund elaborate perfume-making workshops, and those who were trusted with this important task were generously compensated. The wealth and respect that came with the profession were evident in the lavish lifestyle of the chief perfumer and their family. However, being a royal perfumer was not without its challenges. The pressure to create flawless fragrances for the most powerful individuals in the kingdom was immense, and the art of crafting the perfect perfume was considered a sacred duty. Interestingly, the royal perfumers weren't always the only ones who had access to the finest fragrances. While the pharaohs and queens had access to exclusive, luxurious scents, the nobility and wealthy merchants also enjoyed the benefits of high-quality perfumes. As the Egyptian economy flourished, the demand for perfumes grew, and more people sought out the services of skilled perfumers. While the average Egyptian may not have had access to the rare resins and exotic oils used by the elite, they still relied on locally sourced flowers, herbs, and resins to create their own perfumes. The creation of perfumes thus became an essential part of the Egyptian economy, and the trade of fragrant oils and perfumes played a significant role in connecting Egypt to the broader ancient world. Perfume trade routes were well established, with resins, oils, and perfumes being exported to neighboring civilizations, including Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome. These perfumes were highly valued, not just for their fragrance but for their spiritual and symbolic significance. To wear Egyptian perfume was to wear a piece of divine power, and the influence of Egyptian perfumery spread far beyond the borders of the kingdom. The skill of the royal perfumers, combined with the sacred nature of their work, made Egyptian perfumes some of the most sought-after commodities in the ancient world. As you think about the role of royal perfumers in ancient Egypt, it becomes clear that they were far more than just artisans. They were spiritual intermediaries, artists, and scientists, entrusted with the delicate task of creating perfumes that would connect the living with the divine. They understood that perfume was more than just a scent, it was a tool that could elevate the soul, protect the body, and ensure divine favor. Their work was deeply intertwined with Egypt's spiritual and political systems, and their creations helped shape the very fabric of Egyptian society. The royal perfumers of Egypt were a key part of a larger tradition that valued craftsmanship, spirituality, and the importance of scent. They understood the power of fragrance, and their work remains a testament to the ancient Egyptians' ability to blend the sacred and the sensual, the divine and the earthly, in a way that transcended time and space. Now that we've explored the royal perfume makers and their sacred craft, let's turn to another fascinating aspect of Egyptian perfume use, its connection to health and healing. In ancient Egypt, fragrance wasn't just a luxury or a tool for the divine, it was also an integral part of their approach to medicine and well-being. The Egyptians were pioneers in many areas of science and medicine, and their use of perfumes and aromatic oils was no exception. Picture this, a healer, standing in a dimly lit room, preparing a mixture of fragrant oils to soothe the ailments of a patient. The scent of lavender, rosemary, and myrrh fills the air, each oil chosen for its medicinal properties. In Egypt, perfume was about more than just smelling good, it was about healing the body, mind, and soul. The Egyptians believed that scent had the power to affect not just the physical body but also the spiritual and mental state of an individual. Fragrance was a key component of their medicinal practices, and it was used in everything from daily hygiene routines to treatments for various ailments. Myrrh, for example, wasn't just used for its spiritual properties, it was also prized for its healing qualities. It was commonly used in salves to treat wounds and infections, and it was believed to have powerful anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. Similarly, frankincense was used to treat a variety of conditions, including respiratory issues, skin conditions, and digestive problems. Historians still debate the exact role of scent in Egyptian medicine. Some argue that the Egyptians viewed scent as a form of magical healing, while others suggest that they understood the therapeutic effects of certain fragrances on the body. However, what is clear is that perfumes and oils were a vital part of the healing process. The ancient Egyptians didn't just rely on herbs and potions, they combined these with fragrances to create holistic treatments that engaged all the senses. One of the most famous medical texts from ancient Egypt, the Ebers Papyrus, outlines various remedies for ailments, many of which involve the use of perfumes and oils. This ancient manuscript describes the use of various resins, flowers, and oils to treat everything from digestive issues to skin diseases. The Egyptians believed that the right scents could purify the body, calm the mind, and restore balance to both the physical and spiritual realms. The use of fragrance wasn't just about alleviating symptoms, it was about restoring harmony within the individual. One of the most common uses of fragrance in Egyptian medicine was for treating wounds. The Egyptians knew that myrrh and frankincense had powerful antimicrobial properties, and they used these resins to create salves that would be applied to injuries to prevent infection and speed up the healing process. These salves were often mixed with oils like olive oil, which acted as a carrier for the fragrant resins and helped to soothe the skin. The use of scented oils in wound care wasn't just practical, it was also symbolic. By anointing a wound with sacred oils, the Egyptians believed that they were not just healing the body but also protecting the individual's soul. Perfume, in this context, acted as a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds, ensuring that the body and soul remained in harmony during the healing process. In addition to physical ailments, perfume was also used to treat mental and emotional conditions. The Egyptians understood that the mind and body were deeply interconnected, and they used fragrances to calm anxiety, lift spirits, and promote emotional balance. For example, lavender was used to calm the nervous system, while rosemary was believed to improve memory and cognitive function. Peppermint and other invigorating scents were used to refresh the body and mind, helping to alleviate feelings of fatigue and restore mental clarity. Some scholars even believe that the Egyptians used perfume to treat conditions that we would now associate with modern psychology. For instance, the calming effects of certain fragrances may have been used to help individuals dealing with stress or anxiety. The Egyptians believed that by surrounding the body with the right fragrances, they could bring the mind and spirit back into balance. This holistic approach to healing, which combined physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being, was a hallmark of Egyptian medicine. Historians still debate whether perfume was seen as a form of magic or a legitimate form of medicine. Some suggest that the Egyptians believed in the power of fragrance to influence the spiritual realm, while others believe that they recognized the physical healing properties of certain scents. Regardless of how they viewed it, the therapeutic use of perfumes was an integral part of their daily lives. The Egyptians didn't just use perfumes for beauty or spiritual reasons, they saw fragrance as a tool for healing, restoration, and balance. As you reflect on the use of perfume in Egyptian medicine, you begin to realize how advanced their understanding of health and well-being truly was. The Egyptians understood that the senses played a vital role in maintaining balance within the body, and they used fragrance as a way to influence both the physical and spiritual aspects of health. Perfume wasn't just a luxury, it was an essential part of the Egyptian approach to healing and personal care. It was a reminder that well-being wasn't just about the body, it was about the mind, the spirit, and the soul. The healing power of fragrance extended beyond the realm of personal health and wellness, it was also used in the protection of the home and family. Egyptians believed that certain fragrances had protective qualities and could ward off evil spirits or negative influences. Myrrh, in particular, was believed to be a powerful tool for protection, and it was commonly used in incense to purify the air and keep harmful forces at bay. The use of fragrant oils to cleanse the home and create a protective atmosphere was a common practice, especially in times of illness or spiritual crisis. In a society as deeply spiritual as ancient Egypt, the connection between perfume and healing was seen as part of a larger system of balance and harmony. Fragrance wasn't just something to wear or burn, it was an essential part of maintaining health, purity, and spiritual connection. And in this way, perfume became more than just a scent, it became a tool for achieving balance in every aspect of life. As we journey further into the world of Egyptian perfume, we begin to understand its influence beyond the borders of Egypt, particularly in the realm of diplomacy and foreign relations. Perfume in ancient Egypt was not just a domestic luxury, it was a powerful diplomatic tool, used to build alliances, impress foreign dignitaries, and showcase Egypt's wealth and influence. Imagine this, a lavish banquet, held in the pharaoh's palace, where the air is thick with the luxurious scents of frankincense, myrrh, and cinnamon. As dignitaries from neighboring kingdoms arrive, they are greeted by not just the sight of Egypt's opulence but also the intoxicating scents that signal Egypt's power and cultural sophistication. These fragrances weren't just meant to please the senses, they were part of the strategic diplomacy that helped maintain Egypt's place as a dominant force in the ancient world. Perfume played a significant role in the diplomatic gifts exchanged between Egypt and other kingdoms. Foreign dignitaries, merchants, and emissaries from places like Mesopotamia, the Levant, Nubia, and even Greece would often receive gifts of Egyptian perfume, which were prized for their rarity, divine associations, and luxurious aromas. To receive a bottle of Egyptian perfume wasn't just to receive a gift, it was to be connected to the gods themselves, to be granted a piece of Egypt's sacred, divine essence. This made Egyptian perfume an incredibly powerful diplomatic tool, as it allowed Egypt to reinforce its image as a land of wealth, power, and divine favor. Historians still argue about the exact role of perfume in Egyptian diplomacy. Some suggest that the gifting of perfume was symbolic of Egypt's dominance and wealth, while others believe it was a more strategic move, used to cement alliances and win the favor of foreign rulers. Either way, it's clear that perfume was an important part of Egypt's diplomatic efforts. The fragrance wasn't just about pleasing the senses, it was about sending a message. By giving perfume, Egypt sent a message of grace, power, and divinity, all wrapped in a beautifully crafted bottle. Perfume was also a part of Egypt's international trade networks, and its influence extended far beyond the Nile Valley. As Egypt engaged in trade with regions across the ancient world, perfume became one of the most valuable commodities. Myrrh, frankincense, and other resins were imported from regions like Arabia and Africa, and in return, Egypt's perfumes were exported to distant lands. The ancient world prized Egyptian perfume not just for its divine associations but for its quality and potency. Egyptian perfume makers were known for their skill in crafting perfumes that were rich, complex, and long-lasting, setting a standard that would influence the perfume industry for centuries to come. One of the most famous examples of Egyptian perfume's diplomatic role comes from the story of Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt. Cleopatra was known for her intelligence, political savvy, and remarkable beauty, and she used perfume to help secure her position as one of the most powerful women in the ancient world. It's said that Cleopatra used perfume as part of her strategy to captivate and manipulate powerful Roman leaders, including Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. She was known to have bathed in fragrant oils and used luxurious perfumes to make a memorable impression. One of her most famous fragrances was said to be a blend of roses, cinnamon, and frankincense, which she used to charm and seduce Roman generals and politicians. In this way, perfume wasn't just part of Cleopatra's beauty regimen, it was part of her diplomatic toolkit, helping her navigate the complex political landscape of the time. Historians still debate the extent to which Cleopatra's use of perfume was a strategic move or simply a personal preference, but it's clear that she understood the power of scent. The ability to captivate others with fragrance was a tool she used to her advantage in her dealings with Rome. The perfume she wore became symbolic of Egypt's allure and mystique, and the exotic nature of Egyptian perfume made it all the more powerful in the eyes of foreign diplomats and leaders. By wearing these fragrances, Cleopatra didn't just enhance her physical allure, she reinforced Egypt's power and influence on the global stage. Perfume also played a role in Egypt's relations with its neighboring kingdom of Nubia. As one of Egypt's most significant trade partners, Nubia had close cultural and political ties with Egypt, and perfume was often exchanged between the two regions as a sign of goodwill and friendship. Egyptian perfume was considered a luxury in Nubia, and it was often used in religious ceremonies and royal rituals. The exchange of perfume between the two kingdoms was not just about luxury goods, it was about strengthening diplomatic relations and reinforcing cultural ties. The influence of Egyptian perfume even reached beyond the ancient world. As Egypt's influence spread through conquest and trade, its perfumes became highly sought after in the Mediterranean world. By the time of the Greek and Roman empires, Egyptian perfume was considered one of the finest in the world, and many of the fragrances and techniques developed in Egypt were adopted by other civilizations. The art of perfume making, which had been perfected in Egypt, would go on to shape the fragrance industries of ancient Greece, Rome, and beyond. As you reflect on the role of perfume in Egypt's diplomatic and international relations, you begin to understand just how powerful this humble fragrance could be. It wasn't just about luxury, it was a tool of power, influence, and diplomacy. Perfume helped Egypt maintain its status as one of the most powerful and revered civilizations of the ancient world. It allowed the pharaohs to project an image of divine favor, sophistication, and wealth, all while serving as a bridge between Egypt and the outside world. Whether it was a diplomatic gift, a personal adornment, or a part of royal rituals, perfume in Egypt was far more than just a pleasant aroma, it was an essential part of the fabric of Egyptian power. In this world of royal courts, trade routes, and diplomacy, perfume became a silent but potent ambassador for Egypt. Its influence transcended borders, and its scent carried with it the weight of Egypt's history, culture, and power. So, next time you catch a glimpse of a luxurious bottle of perfume, remember that the power of scent has been shaping diplomatic relations and royal influence for millennia. Now that we've seen how perfume served as a diplomatic tool, let's explore the fascinating relationship between perfume and love in ancient Egypt. In a culture as richly spiritual and symbolic as Egypt's, perfume wasn't just about hygiene, wealth, or divine connection, it also had a significant role to play in matters of the heart. In ancient Egypt, perfume was believed to have the power to influence attraction, enhance romantic relationships, and even invoke the divine power of love itself. Imagine stepping into a lavish banquet, where lovers exchange glances over the scent of sweet lotus and jasmine, their hearts stirred by the fragrance of affection. For the Egyptians, perfume wasn't just an accessory, it was an aphrodisiac, a tool to invoke passion, and an essential part of romantic expression. Perfume's role in love and attraction can be traced back to the symbolic power of scent. The ancient Egyptians, who understood the spiritual and psychological effects of fragrance, believed that the right scents could influence a person's emotional and physical state. The Egyptians were aware that certain scents had the power to soothe, calm, or invigorate, and they used this knowledge in love rituals, matchmaking, and even courtship. The belief that perfume could make someone more attractive wasn't just a matter of vanity, it was part of a larger understanding that scent could elevate the soul and align the body with the divine. Historians still debate the exact role of perfume in Egyptian love rituals. While some suggest that perfume was primarily used to please the gods, others argue that it was also meant to help individuals connect with each other, creating bonds of affection or intimacy. The use of scent in love and romance was likely a way of enhancing one's personal appeal, both physically and emotionally. The idea that scent could be used to evoke desire or attraction was widely accepted in Egyptian society, and perfume played a key role in romantic and marital customs. Whether it was a gift exchanged between lovers or a personal adornment to enhance one's allure, fragrance was a key element of love in ancient Egypt. For example, the lotus flower, which symbolized rebirth, purity, and femininity, was one of the most popular ingredients used in love perfumes. The sweet, heady scent of lotus was believed to have the power to invoke passion and draw others toward the wearer. The lotus perfume was not just about creating a pleasing scent, it was a means of invoking the divine energy of Hathor, the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility. Hathor was often depicted as a woman with a head of cow horns, carrying a scepter and a lotus flower, and she was considered the protector of love and intimacy. To wear lotus perfume was to invoke Hathor's divine favor, and to invite her blessings of love, fertility, and beauty. Similarly, jasmine, with its sweet, intoxicating fragrance, was also associated with romantic and sensual attraction. Jasmine perfumes were commonly used by both men and women, and it was believed that the scent could not only attract love but also enhance passion. Just like the lotus, jasmine was a symbol of fertility and divine connection, and wearing it was thought to help foster a deep emotional and physical connection between lovers. Historians still debate whether the use of these perfumes was truly linked to love magic, or if the fragrances were simply seen as a way to enhance one's beauty and allure. However, one thing is certain, perfume played a crucial role in Egypt's understanding of love, beauty, and intimacy. The belief in the power of scent to influence emotions and attraction was deeply ingrained in Egyptian culture, and the use of perfume as a tool to invoke love was common practice. Beyond personal use, perfume was also an important part of Egyptian marriage customs. Marriage, like many aspects of life in Egypt, was not just a personal affair, it was also a social and spiritual contract. For the Egyptians, love and marriage were seen as part of the divine order, and perfume played a role in reinforcing this connection. A bride might wear a perfume made of fragrant oils and flowers to symbolize her purity and her connection to the gods of love and fertility. Similarly, the groom might offer his bride a bottle of perfume as a symbol of his devotion and affection. These perfumes were not just gifts, they were sacred offerings, meant to bless the couple's union and ensure that their love would be blessed by the gods. In addition to its role in marriage, perfume also played a role in Egyptian eroticism. It was used to create a sensual atmosphere, enhance intimacy, and celebrate physical attraction. Perfumed oils were used in massage rituals, often as part of romantic and sexual encounters. The oils and perfumes helped to relax the body, enhance physical sensations, and create a mood of sensuality and connection. The Egyptians understood that love wasn't just about emotional connection, it was about physical attraction and the union of body and soul. Perfume played a significant role in fostering this union, allowing lovers to connect on a deeper level, both spiritually and physically. Perfume's role in love and attraction was not confined to the upper classes. While the elite might have had access to the finest, most exotic fragrances, even ordinary Egyptians used scented oils to enhance their personal allure and romantic connections. The use of perfume was widespread, and it was an essential part of Egyptian culture, regardless of social status. For both the rich and the poor, perfume was a means of enhancing beauty, invoking divine favor, and strengthening personal connections. As you think about the role of perfume in love and romance, you begin to realize that scent was much more than just a tool for personal beauty, it was a conduit for spiritual and emotional connection. The Egyptians understood that perfume had the power to influence not only attraction but also love itself. By invoking the divine power of the gods of love, by using perfumes to enhance beauty and allure, the Egyptians were able to create bonds that transcended the physical realm. Perfume in Egypt wasn't just about smelling good, it was about invoking the divine, creating connections, and enhancing the spiritual and physical bonds between individuals. It was an integral part of love, beauty, and intimacy, and its role in Egyptian culture can still be felt today, as we continue to use fragrance to celebrate love and passion. Now that we've explored perfume's role in love, let's dive into how perfume served as a marker of status and identity in ancient Egypt. Scent was not just about beauty or the divine, it was also an indicator of one's social position. In a society where status was deeply embedded in both public and private life, perfume became a powerful symbol of one's wealth, rank, and privilege. Imagine walking into an Egyptian marketplace, where you can smell the rich, complex fragrances wafting from the finest bottles, reserved for the elite. These perfumes were much more than just a pleasing aroma, they were tangible symbols of power and social standing, marking the wearer as someone with access to the finest luxuries Egypt had to offer. The use of perfume as a symbol of status can be traced back to the very highest echelons of Egyptian society. Pharaohs and queens, whose lives were intertwined with the gods, were expected to wear perfumes that reflected their divine connection. The perfumes used by these royal figures were crafted from the rarest and most expensive ingredients, some of which had to be imported from distant lands. Frankincense, myrrh, and exotic flowers like lotus were just a few of the ingredients that formed the basis of these luxurious fragrances. Wearing these perfumes wasn't just about smelling good, it was a way to communicate one's divine right to rule and to project an image of wealth, opulence, and celestial favor. Historians still debate the extent to which perfume was used specifically as a tool for projecting power in ancient Egypt. Some suggest that the pharaohs used fragrance as part of their larger image-building strategies, while others believe that the use of perfume was more about spiritual and personal expression. However, one thing is clear, fragrance was a key part of how power was displayed. The pharaoh's perfume was, in essence, an extension of their divine persona, a symbol of their connection to the gods and their authority over the land. To wear the same fragrance as the pharaoh was to be touched by divine favor, to be in the presence of royalty, and to share in the sacredness of their rule. But the connection between perfume and status wasn't just reserved for the pharaohs. The nobility, priests, and wealthy merchants also wore perfumes as a mark of their elevated social position. Perfume was an important part of daily life for the elite, used not only for personal care but also as a way to show their wealth and sophistication. Wealthy Egyptians were able to afford the rarest perfumes, which were often stored in beautifully crafted containers, sometimes made from precious materials like gold, silver, or glass. These containers were not just functional, they were works of art, reflecting the status and taste of their owners. The more ornate and elaborate the bottle, the more it signified the wealth and power of the individual. As with other luxury items in Egypt, perfume was also used to demonstrate generosity and status in social settings. It was common for the wealthy to gift perfumes to friends, guests, or visitors as a sign of hospitality and prestige. Giving a bottle of rare perfume was a way to impress others and demonstrate one's power. These gifts were highly valued, and they often became symbols of friendship, alliance, or favor. The act of gifting perfume was part of the broader culture of exchange and diplomacy in ancient Egypt, where gifts were exchanged not only for personal gain but as a way of solidifying relationships and showcasing one's generosity. However, while perfume was predominantly a symbol of wealth and power, it was also used in more intimate ways, even among the lower classes. The average Egyptian might not have had access to the rarest and most expensive perfumes, but they still used scented oils and fragrances as part of their daily routine. Local flowers and herbs such as lavender, mint, and chamomile were often used to create perfumes that could be worn for personal care, hygiene, or spiritual protection. While these perfumes were not as extravagant as those of the royal court, they still played a significant role in maintaining personal status, albeit on a smaller scale. Even for the common people, perfume was a way to express their identity, to take part in the larger cultural practices of the time, and to demonstrate care for one's appearance and well-being. Historians still argue whether perfume was truly an indicator of social class in Egypt, or whether it was more about individual identity and expression. While it's true that the elite had access to the most exotic and expensive perfumes, it's also clear that fragrance was an important part of Egyptian culture at all levels. Perfume was, in many ways, a universal symbol, a reflection of Egypt's beauty, luxury, and spiritual practices, one that transcended social boundaries. The belief in the power of scent, the divine associations tied to particular fragrances, and the connection between perfume and personal or royal identity were deeply ingrained in Egyptian culture. The perfume trade was also an essential part of Egypt's economy. As Egypt engaged in trade with other civilizations, it exported its perfumes and aromatic oils to neighboring lands, where they were highly valued. The perfume trade helped to cement Egypt's reputation as a center of luxury and opulence. Merchants and traders who dealt in perfumes were able to amass wealth, and many of them rose to prominence through the trade of these precious goods. In this way, the perfume industry was not just a symbol of luxury, it was also an essential part of Egypt's economic power and international influence. As you stand in this world of fragrant oils, beautiful glass bottles, and sacred resins, you begin to understand the full significance of perfume in ancient Egypt. It wasn't just about luxury or hygiene, it was about identity. Whether worn by a pharaoh, a priest, a merchant, or a commoner, perfume was a reflection of one's place in society. It was a symbol of wealth, of power, of divine favor, and of personal expression. From the most elaborate, divine fragrances to the simple, locally made oils, perfume was a mark of status, a way to define oneself within the larger cultural context of Egypt. In Egypt, scent was more than just a physical experience, it was a language, one that spoke of power, beauty, and connection to the divine. Perfume, in all its forms, was a bridge between the earthly and the divine, the personal and the political, and the individual and the society. So next time you catch a hint of a familiar fragrance, remember, you might just be smelling a piece of history, a whiff of Egypt's ancient power, and a symbol of status that has survived thousands of years. Now that we've covered how perfume represented status, let's delve into something perhaps even more profound, the cultural and spiritual importance of scent in ancient Egypt. Beyond its use for beauty, diplomacy, and healing, perfume was deeply intertwined with Egypt's spiritual beliefs and practices. For the Egyptians, fragrance was far from a simple luxury or an aesthetic choice. It was a bridge between the earthly and the divine, a tool for spiritual purification, and an essential part of their religious rituals. Imagine entering a temple filled with the rich, warm scent of frankincense and myrrh, the air heavy with the divine presence. The Egyptians believed that scent was not only an offering to the gods but also a means of connecting to the spiritual realm. Perfume's spiritual significance can be traced to its use in religious rituals. In temples dedicated to the gods, incense and perfumes were burned regularly to honor the deities, to purify the sacred spaces, and to elevate the worshippers' souls. The act of burning incense, particularly frankincense and myrrh, was thought to send prayers and offerings to the gods, with the fragrance rising as a symbol of divine communication. For the Egyptians, scent wasn't just a way to cleanse the air, it was a way to cleanse the spirit and create a direct connection to the divine. Historians still debate the precise role of perfume in these religious rituals. Some scholars argue that the Egyptians saw incense and perfumes as a form of spiritual technology, a means of influencing the gods. Others suggest that they were more symbolic, offering the gods a sensory gift as a sign of devotion. Regardless of the specific beliefs, it's clear that perfume was central to Egyptian religious practices. Whether it was used to purify, to protect, or to invoke the divine, fragrance played a crucial role in maintaining the sacred balance between the mortal and the divine. In addition to its role in worship, perfume was also an essential part of daily life for the Egyptian elite. For the nobility and royalty, the act of wearing perfume was a daily ritual that helped them maintain a sense of divine favor. The pharaohs, in particular, believed that wearing the right fragrance was a way of staying connected to the gods and ensuring their continued protection and guidance. The sacred fragrances they wore were not just for luxury, they were a vital part of maintaining their spiritual and divine connection. Perfume also held a prominent place in Egyptian funerary practices. The Egyptians believed that scent had the power to guide the soul through the afterlife and ensure a smooth transition into the next world. Perfume was used to anoint the body of the deceased, and it was placed in the tombs to accompany the soul on its journey through the underworld. The rich, fragrant resins like myrrh and frankincense, which had been used to preserve the body during mummification, were believed to help protect the soul and ensure that it was welcomed into the afterlife by the gods. In this sense, perfume was not just a ritualistic element, it was a tool for securing a favorable outcome in the spiritual journey after death. Historians still debate the precise symbolic meanings attached to these perfumes and their role in the afterlife. Some scholars suggest that they were purely for spiritual protection, while others believe they had a more active role in guiding the soul through the underworld and into the presence of the gods. What is certain, however, is that perfume played a key role in ensuring that the deceased was equipped with everything needed for their journey into eternity. The rich, divine scents that accompanied them were not just for comfort, they were symbols of divine favor and a way to stay connected to the gods. But perfume's spiritual role wasn't just about the afterlife. In daily life, Egyptians used fragrances to purify themselves and their surroundings, to ward off evil spirits, and to invoke divine protection. Myrrh, for example, was believed to have purifying properties, and it was used to cleanse both the body and the home. Frankincense, similarly, was used to purify the air, create a sacred atmosphere, and protect against negative influences. The Egyptians understood that fragrance had the power to influence not just the body but also the soul, and they used perfumes as tools to maintain balance, purity, and spiritual alignment. The role of perfume in the spiritual life of the Egyptians reflects their deep understanding of the interconnectedness between the physical, emotional, and spiritual realms. To wear perfume was to engage with the divine, to purify oneself, and to remain in harmony with the gods. The fragrances were not just physical substances, they were spiritual tools, designed to protect, purify, and elevate the soul. In this sense, the act of wearing perfume was a deeply sacred practice, one that was intertwined with every aspect of Egyptian life, from daily grooming rituals to religious ceremonies and even the journey into the afterlife. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians viewed scent purely as a physical experience or whether they believed it had a deeper metaphysical power. Some believe that the Egyptians saw fragrance as a form of magic, capable of influencing both the physical and spiritual worlds. Others suggest that scent was simply a means of honoring the gods and maintaining spiritual balance. Regardless of the interpretation, it is clear that perfume was an essential part of Egyptian spirituality, and its use in religious and daily practices was an integral aspect of their worldview. In ancient Egypt, scent was more than just a way to smell pleasant, it was a means of spiritual connection, purification, and divine communication. The use of perfume was woven into the very fabric of Egyptian culture, from the most sacred rituals to the most intimate personal care practices. It was a reminder that, in the world of the ancient Egyptians, everything, beauty, health, love, and even death, was imbued with the power of fragrance. As you stand in the midst of this ancient world, surrounded by the divine scents of frankincense and myrrh, you begin to realize just how profound the role of perfume was in Egyptian society. It was a tool for connecting with the divine, a way of purifying the body and soul, and a means of ensuring that one remained in harmony with the cosmic order. In ancient Egypt, fragrance wasn't just about luxury or beauty, it was a sacred practice, a way to elevate oneself, both spiritually and physically, and to stay in tune with the divine forces that governed the world. As we near the conclusion of our journey through the world of ancient Egyptian perfumes, let's reflect on the lasting legacy of this fragrant civilization. The Egyptians were not just the pioneers of perfume making, they laid the foundations for the global perfume industry as we know it today. The art and science of perfumery that flourished in Egypt, with its deep spiritual, cultural, and medicinal connections, would ripple through the ancient world and continue to shape fragrance traditions for millennia. Today, when we reach for a bottle of perfume, whether it's a floral, woody, or spicy scent, we're still engaging with the same foundational principles that the ancient Egyptians mastered. Perfume, in all its forms, became one of Egypt's most important exports, and its influence spread far beyond the borders of the Nile. Egypt was a crossroads of ancient trade routes, and perfume, especially its prized resins and oils, traveled across the Mediterranean and beyond. To wear Egyptian perfume was to connect with the divine, to partake in the wealth and power of one of the world's most influential civilizations. As the Egyptian empire fell to foreign invaders, the knowledge of perfume making and its cultural significance spread throughout the Mediterranean, from Greece to Rome, and later to other parts of the world. Egyptian fragrances inspired the Romans, who adapted and refined perfume-making techniques, and the legacy of Egyptian perfumery can still be seen in the modern perfume industry. The techniques developed by Egyptian perfumers, including the use of resins like frankincense and myrrh, would become central to the traditions of other ancient cultures, which adopted and adapted them in their own spiritual and beauty rituals. It's fascinating to think that, in a sense, the perfume we wear today is still connected to those ancient beliefs in the power of fragrance. Just as Egyptians believed that perfume could connect them to the divine, elevate their souls, and protect their bodies, we still use fragrances to enhance our well-being and make a statement about our identity. Perfume is no longer just a luxury item for the elite, as it was in ancient Egypt, but is now accessible to nearly everyone. Yet, the cultural reverence for scent, which began in Egypt, still shapes our modern practices. When you wear perfume, you're not just choosing a scent, you're choosing a piece of history, a symbol of the same divine power, protection, and beauty that Egyptians associated with their sacred fragrances. You are, in a sense, wearing the legacy of one of the world's most fascinating and enduring civilizations. Reflecting on this, you realize just how universal the role of scent has been throughout human history. In Egypt, perfume was used in nearly every aspect of life, from daily hygiene rituals to royal ceremonies, from love and marriage to funerary rites. It was part of the complex web that tied together the physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of life. And today, even in a vastly different world, we still use fragrance to connect with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us. Whether it's a perfume that reminds you of a special memory or a scent that makes you feel confident, the power of fragrance remains just as potent as it was in ancient Egypt. As you breathe in the sweet, sacred scents of frankincense, myrrh, and lotus, you are reminded of how perfume in ancient Egypt was more than just a commodity. It was a vital part of the culture, spirituality, and identity of a civilization. The Egyptians understood that scent was not only about pleasing the senses, it was about connecting to the divine, maintaining balance, and influencing the world around them. The fragrances they crafted were more than just smells, they were symbols of life, death, love, and power. They were tools that elevated the soul and marked the wearer as someone in tune with the gods and with the eternal forces that governed the universe. As we close our journey through ancient Egypt's fragrant world, it's clear that the Egyptians were not just the first to craft perfumes, they were the first to understand the deep and lasting impact that scent can have on the human experience. From the grand temples to the private homes, from the royal courts to the tombs, fragrance was always present, a constant reminder of the divine, the powerful, and the eternal. And now, as we wear and enjoy perfume, we too are part of that ongoing connection, connecting with a history that stretches back thousands of years, with a culture that understood the power of scent to shape and elevate our lives. Now, take a moment to appreciate the fragrance of the world around you, whether it's the flowers in your garden, the perfume you wear, or even the subtle scent of the air after a rainstorm. Like the Egyptians, we use scent not just to smell good but to connect, to communicate, and to transform our environment. The legacy of ancient Egypt's perfumes lives on, not just in the bottles we buy, but in the way we continue to use fragrance to enhance our lives and spirits. As the sounds of the bustling markets and sacred temples fade away, you find yourself surrounded by the stillness of time, the echoes of ancient Egypt softly retreating into the past. The rich scents of frankincense and myrrh, once so powerful in their divine presence, now linger only as a memory, a distant whisper carried on the winds of time. The beauty and complexity of Egyptian perfume, which once bridged the earthly and the divine, rests in the air, inviting you to relax and reflect on the timeless connection between fragrance and the soul. Close your eyes for a moment and breathe deeply, letting the serene atmosphere of this journey settle around you. The fragrances of Egypt, whether they were used for healing, love, or spiritual connection, now become a gentle reminder that scent can elevate the spirit, purify the mind, and calm the soul. In the stillness of this moment, you can almost feel the weight of history, how it's carried on the air we breathe, and how we continue to use fragrance to connect with ourselves and the world around us. Let the soft warmth of these thoughts wrap around you like a comforting blanket, reminding you that, just like the Egyptians, we continue to weave scent into our lives, whether it's through perfume, incense, or the simple, natural fragrances of the world. Each fragrance carries a story, an emotion, a memory. And just like in ancient Egypt, the right scent can ground us, protect us, and help us connect to something greater than ourselves. Now, let the mind settle into quiet relaxation, as the echoes of Egypt fade into the calm night. Let this journey linger as a comforting presence, a sweet fragrance to carry with you as you drift into a peaceful rest. Sweet dreams, and may the fragrant memories of Egypt guide you gently through the night.